Hello everyone, this is Bill with Yarn Crafts for Lefties. Today we're going to be learning how to brioche knit. Brioche is the type of fabric that creates this really beautiful, squishy, warm fabric. When we look at it, it very much resembles one by one rib. I promise you, it is not, even though it looks like it. Brioche itself needs us to consider a couple of things. First one, when we're making something with brioche, it's going to use twice as much yarn as regular knitting does. So if you are freehanding a brioche scarf like this one, in worsted weight yarn, most scarves will take about 350 to 400 yards in order to make a full scarf. With brioche knitting, you would actually need about 700 to 800 yards in order to do a scarf in worsted weight in this basic brioche fabric. Second thing to keep in mind, when we approach brioche, we are always working in pairs. Our stitches pair up. It always falls into a pairing of a single stitch, then a pair of stitches. Single stitch, pair of stitches. Single stitch, pair of stitches. With the pair of stitches falling over what would look like our knit column. These two stitches we will always combine together. That's part of brioche. The third thing to remember, it takes working a right side row and a wrong side row in order to complete one full row of brioche. In regular knitting, we work a right side row, we've completed a row, and our fabric has grown in height. We do the wrong side row, we've completed a second row, and our fabric has grown another row in height. With brioche, the right side row does half of the growth. The wrong side row finishes the growth. So you have to work a right and a wrong side row to actually create one row of height. So, enough of the technical aspect. Let's get into the fun stuff, which is the knitting. With brioche knitting, we are going to have to create a cast-on row, do a foundation row, and then we will be able to get into making our brioche fabric. The cast-on can be any number of even stitches. You do want to cast on loosely, so use a nice loose cast-on that you're comfortable with that will let you have some space. I did an old Norwegian here. It tends to be my go-to. You can use a long tail. If you want something invisible, go with an Italian tubular. That's going to give you an edge that really you can't see. It's going to look like the fabric just starts. Now, with our foundation row, we're only going to use 3 stitches. We're going to use a yarn over, slip as if to purl, and a knit stitch. That's our foundation row, and we're going to repeat that all the way across. So I'm going to turn my work, make sure I got an even number of stitches, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. I do, so I'm ready to start. Now, we want to keep our working yarn to the front when we start. So I'm going to leave it in front of my working needle, because the first stitch of every row is going to be a yarn over. So I can take it and move it to the back if I want, or I can leave it in front. But no matter what, it is going to have to go over our working needle, just like you see here. We need it to create a stitch, and the only way for that to happen is if it goes from the front of our work to the back. So I'm just going to leave it in front for now so it's out of my way and I don't have to worry about it. I'm going to slip this next stitch as if to purl. So I will go from left to right under the front leg of that stitch and just transfer it over to my left hand needle. Now I need to knit the next stitch. I'm going to keep my yarn in the front. I'm going to enter the stitch as if to knit. Now I'm going to take my working yarn and I'm going to bring it right over the working needle to the back. Then I'm simply going to wrap it around the tip of my needle clockwise, just like I would to make a knit stitch. Bring the yarn through, and then slide the stitch off. And once we do that, that yarn over that didn't exist before now does. So I have my yarn over here, my slip stitch, and the stitch I just knitted. Now we're going to repeat this process. I'm going to bring the yarn to the front, slip the next stitch as if to purl, and now I will knit the next stitch. My yarn's in the front. I'm going to bring it over the working needle to the back and then just wrap it and bring it through. Yarn to the front, slip as if to purl, and then we will just knit the next stitch. Just bring it over my working needle and then wrap it around the tip. Remember, we're going clockwise, otherwise we'll end up with a twisted stitch. Yarn to the front, slip as if to purl, then we will knit the next stitch, bring it in. Now I'm just going to turn it so you can kind of see. It's in the front, I'm bringing it to the back and then wrapping it clockwise around the tip of the working needle, and then bring it right through and slide off, just like we would for a knit stitch. Bring it to the front. This is what makes our yarn over happen. Slip as if to purl. Now we knit the last stitch here. And we have created our foundation row. Quick, simple, and easy. So let's take a look at what we've made. We have a pairing of stitches, which is our yarn over and our slip stitch, followed by the knit. We have a pairing of stitches, a yarn over and a slip, followed by our knit. Now we have this all the way across. Our pairing, single, pairing, single, pairing, single. So now let's turn our work and see what it looks like from the other side. Once we turn it, the order is going to reverse. We're going to have the single stitch, and you can really see the pairing. In regular knitting, if we saw this, I would go, uh-oh, I made a mistake somewhere, because it looks like I didn't have the yarn in the right place and made an accidental yarn over. This is what we want. We need to see this pairing. This pairing of stitches is the hallmark of brioche knitting. So now we're ready to do our pattern row. This is a 1 row repeat. So it's super easy, and it consists of 3 stitches. Yarn over, slip as if to purl, and then, because we're working this pairing together, it would be called a brioche knit in brioche knitting. You would see the abbreviation as a BRK, and you would hear someone call it a burk. In regular knitting, it's the equivalent of a knit 2 together. So our pattern is essentially yarn over, slip as if to purl, knit 2 together. So I'm going to just set my yarn up, grab my needle, and again, I'm going to keep the yarn in the front. I will slip this next stitch as if to purl. And now I'm going to knit these 2 stitches together. If you did a knit 2 tog or a knit 2 together, you know how to do this. In brioche knitting, it's called a brioche knit or a burk. So same thing as before when we did the knit stitch. I'm going to take the yarn from the front of my work to the back by going over my working needle. Then I will wrap the yarn around the tip of my working needle clockwise, slide it through, then transfer the 2 stitches off. And yes, this funky bar of yarn here, you want that to happen. So now we repeat the process. Yarn front, slip as if to purl, and now we're going to knit these 2 stitches together, which in brioche knitting is called a burk or a brioche knit. Bring my yarn to the back, wrap it around, and then bring it through, slide it off. Repeat. Yarn front. This is going to make our yarn over. Slip as if to purl. Brioche knit. Take the yarn, again, bring it from the front to the back, and then just wrap it around the tip of your needle. Bring it through, slide it off. Yarn front, between the needles, slip as if to purl, brioche knit. Open the needles, yarn front, slip as if to purl, and now we're just going to knit these 2 stitches together using the brioche knit. Bring it to the front, slide it off, and you have completed a row of brioche knitting. Now keep in mind, with brioche, it takes 2 rows to complete 1 actual row of height. So technically what I've done is a half row by working this side of the fabric. From here on out, we just turn our work and repeat the exact same process. Sorry, I almost did that continental. So now I'm going to reverse this. Keep the yarn in the front, slip as if to purl. Here's my paired stitch. I'm going to go into it and perform my brioche knit. Now, really keep in mind when we're doing the knits, it's going to feel a little weird. Yarn front, slip as if to purl, brioche knit. So front of and over our working needle to the back, then wrap clockwise around the tip of our needle and slide through. And then after a while, it just becomes this very comfortable rhythm that you follow through on. And remember, we're always combining the paired stitches together. Every time you come to that yarn over slip stitch combination, we're always going to do a brioche knit or a knit 2 together. Yarn front, slip as if to purl, brioche knit. One more. Yarn front, slip as if to purl, brioche knit. So that simple row, repeat of a yarn over, slip as if to purl, and brioche knit is what's going to take us from this to this. When you're done, simply go ahead and bind off using a stretchy bind off, or take your needle size and increase it 1 or 2 needle sizes in order to make sure you have a loose bind off. You do not want to bind off tightly because it will cause the fabric to just pull in and you'll lose that lovely edge that you could have. So I hope you found this episode with Yarn Crafts for Lefties helpful. Remember to click like, subscribe, and hit that alert button so you know when new good stuff comes out. Thank you very much, and have a happy day. Happy knitting!